well read and caffeinated, and it says established
Ooh.
1908. It says established 1908, and I like to think that that's established when Edward Cullen was born.
Oh my God. Is that when he was born?
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's so funny.
I don't know
1908.
if it's that, but 1908 is such
I
a weird
mean,
date to pick.
of all these fantasy books we've been reading, I'm just still such a stan of like Edward. I think
Oh,
also
yeah.
just because of like what
I mean,
age
like,
we were
he's,
when it came out, it's just like so
yeah,
hard to like I
he's
just loved him.
absolutely problematic. He's absolutely weird. He is
Hmm.
absolutely, but
Hmm.
no, he definitely wins.
He's the best.
Um,
So, I mean, I'm not wearing anything book related, but I'm wearing a sweater and it's not sweater weather.
it is
But
absolutely not.
tomorrow,
Tomorrow,
tomorrow when we're recording, it's supposed to be 40 degrees in the morning. So in Texas, I'm so excited. It only took till the middle of October for it to finally get to like fall weather.
yeah,
So
and it's only
I'm
going to be here
pumped.
for 2 days, and then it's
Yeah,
going to go back to
two
the 90s.
literally 2 days. So, but
Yeah,
it'll be a
and then it's
great
going to go back
Wednesday
into the
and
90s.
Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so welcome back to Big Fantasy Energy. I'm Jared,
I'm Ashley.
and we are here today to talk about. We're going to actually continue our theme. So, our theme for this month of November is Indigenous authors. So, this week we will be covering A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and Ashley will tell us all about that. But how have you been, girl?
Been good,
Busy?
surviving in the 90-degree heat
Oh
in
my God.
October.
Not even 90. Like it was 97 this week.
It was 97 today. It's absurd.
90, 97, folks, and it's October 15th, like when we're
Yeah,
recording this.
we went to the pool on
Yeah.
Sunday because it
Yeah,
was 97 degrees.
I was literally thinking about I was talking to Colby about going to the pool today because it was 97 degrees today.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, but
But anyway. So yeah, we're covering A Touch of Darkness. I don't know about you, Jared, but I was raised on Greek mythology.
I
I
was, and then I thought I was, and then I went to this event with Ashley where we like read silently and at this cute little local coffee shop in Austin. And I thought I like really was raised on Greek mythology, which I was, but I just never
Yeah,
like paid enough attention to it. But Ashley was on another level. She knows way more about
no.
it than I do. So,
When I say I was raised on Greek mythology, these were my bedtime stories. I
mm,
had
okay.
this big book,
Oh wow.
and it's like Greek mythology kind of like picture story. I would read one of the stories a night, and these were my bedtime stories
I
growing
mean,
up.
I would watch Hercules a lot, even though he should have been Heracles. But
Yeah, but
does
that
that
also
count?
depends. Yeah, it does. But no, like these were like I read these like one of the stories each night. My mom would read one of them to me, and then once I started being able to read them to myself, I would reread them. And I was raised on these from like first grade to like sixth.
So
So,
what you're saying is A Touch of Darkness is Greek mythology.
so what I'm saying is that anything that's Greek mythology
You
like
love.
wins for me because it's so nostalgic for me. Like I love Percy Jackson
Oh
growing up
yeah,
too. Like that was one thing my brother and I could read together because like it was boy enough for him. But
boy
like,
enough. Yeah, that's
but you know
fair.
what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I really do. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so Zachary and I would read those together. I love it. So this story is Greek mythology. It is a retelling of Hades and Persephone, which if you were a little girl who loved Greek mythology, you were all about Hades and Persephone. We all know this story. The god of death rules the underworld. And he's honestly the original morally gray character. Like, hands down. Persephone is the goddess of spring and rebirth. But what is rebirth without death? You need death in order to have rebirth. So in this story, we're in New Athens. The gods live fully among mortals after the Great Descent, which seems to be based on kind of how this is set up, like at some point, you had ancient Greece, you had all that, and then there was like our normal lifespan, blah, blah, blah. And then the Greek gods come back. You're kind of in an age similar to ours now, but the Greek gods are part of our world now. They're out there, seen among people. They're part of it. They're basically your A-list celebrities. Persephone is living as a mortal while attending college, with the threat of her mother, Demeter, removing her from that life, removing her from the normal life she's always wanted at any moment. All Persephone wants to do is graduate and get herself a full-time job as a reporter at the local newspaper in about 6 months. She's already got an internship there. We start off with her, like, basically her first day celebrating getting that internship. And her best friend Lexi wants to take her out that night to celebrate the gods. Her only rule is that Persephone's only rule is that she can't go where the gods are going because her mother wants her to stay away from the gods because no one really knows who Persephone is. And she's also trying to pull off being immortal herself.
Wait,
so they go to
controlling mothers?
Right?
Wait, a mother who's
Never
controlling
heard.
her?
Never heard.
No way.
Never
Okay.
heard.
Sorry.
Nope. Yeah, nope. So they head off to a club called Nevernight. This club is owned and operated by the god of death himself. Persephone has that, like I said, that one rule that she must follow that her mother gave her: do not interact with other gods or goddesses. The night carries on. Persephone ends up in the gaming hall above the club, and she meets a mysterious hot man. He's like, who could it be? He tempts her into...
The way they write him, he sounds so hot, by the way. Oh my God. Continue.
Unbelievably. The way anyone writes Hades, I'm always like,
but also all the
hot.
characters have been like super hot that they write because they're like, not generically, but like objectively hot, right?
Yeah.
But the way they describe Hades in this is like 1,000,000%. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. No. So he tempts her into a game, but he's only doing it to teach her how to play. And she loses this game, and she finds out that she's now in a contract with the god of death. This is how he rules, and it's how he gets souls. And she was supposed to avoid him, but now she's stuck. The deal is she has to bring life to the underworld in 6 months or become Hades' prisoner forever. This should be a simple task. She's the goddess of spring. Her mother is the goddess of harvest. So theoretically, in all of this, should be a pretty simple task. But Persephone has another secret. She doesn't have any powers. Anytime she touches anything living, it dies. Now she wants to expose Hades for the deceiver that he is, because he's tricked her into this deal. But, lines are crossed, clothes are shed, and will anyone walk away unscathed? Who's to say?
Oh my God, clothes lost. Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I love it.
So, once again, for me, I love Greek mythology. I really enjoy these kind of stories.
Well, it was modern too. It was like urban fantasy with a twist of like, they were like New Athens, which was like cool to me.
Yeah. I would rate this book like 3.5. I don't think it's the best Hades and Persephone's retelling I've ever read, but I really enjoyed it. And anything with Hades and Persephone is going to get a pretty decent rating from me. This book is 3 peppers for me. There is a decent amount of...
Wait. Sorry, 3 peppers. Wait, what'd you say star rating?
3.5.
Oh, okay. That's what I think.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, like, this isn't the best book I've ever read. This isn't the best Hades and Persephone retelling I've ever read. I've definitely read better ones. But I love Greek mythology. I love Hades and Persephone. I don't think that the world building in this is like groundbreaking or anything like that. Obviously, we've heard about this many times before. It's an interesting spin on the old myths because it is set in like a more like today world. She's going to college. You get to see a lot of people from other Greek myths pop into this. And so if you know about Greek myths, you kind of know what their story is going to be. You can kind of see where they're going to go, who's going to like betray who or whatever. Hades, and no matter what one it is, he's always someone who's like really misunderstood and held apart from the world of the living. People don't like death. They're afraid of death. That translates over into the god of death and is pretty consistent no matter what retelling you see. But while he has to maintain this control and be in charge and kind of be this morally gray character, the only thing he wants is to belong and to at least have someone and to be loved and like make up for what he sees as his fault. Even though this book isn't from his perspective, I personally feel like you really do feel his kind of longing, and like you can like, even though we're seeing it through Persephone's eyes, I feel like even when she's not looking, you can, or paying super close attention, you feel the tension of him like just wanting someone to pick him kind of situation.
I agree. Yeah.
So Persephone though is running from what's expected of her, wants to be her own person. She is given that opportunity in a way that she's never really expected. Hades definitely offers her an avenue to not be so dependent and not be so afraid of her mother. She's always wanted power, has really felt like a failure. I like her story. I think that like within this, she really grew comfortable with herself. I felt like she grew. I felt like she became more self-assured. The one thing I really dislike is a miscommunication trope, and that is in this story. I dislike miscommunication tropes. We are adults. Let's have a conversation. And
Preach.
yeah, like just talk it out. It's not always easy. Like I get it. Like it's not always easy having the conversation, but just talk it out. And like throughout this whole thing, like a lot of stuff happens and she like doesn't, she just assumes and like wanders off and gets all pissed off. And even like Hades is like, actions speak louder, and she just like doesn't listen to it. I loved Hecate. I love Hecate. I want more of her. I also hope Lexi gets more page time in the rest of the series. I also do, this isn't a spoiler, but I think that it helps a lot. I really like the setup of this series. So this series, and how even the author recommends reading it, is this series is set up where the first book is Persephone's point of view. The second book is like the same timeline of the first book, but told from Hades' point of view. So I feel like, and I was having this conversation with you Jared, I feel like the first book has to get that base level myth, like the myth we've all heard. I feel like it has to get that out of the way, because this is a decently long series. I feel like it has to get that out of the way in order for her to delve into like a deeper series and a bigger plot for the rest of it. Because overall, if this book was on its own, this is just a Hades and Persephone retelling. There is nothing new. There's nothing to like be like, well, what are you gonna? Nothing makes me go, what's the rest of this series going to be? There's nothing here to like base a rest of a series on.
Agreed.
It kind of just would stand alone.
And you told me that, so I was like, I was like, okay, I can see that for sure.
Yeah. So I think that with the second book, now that we've gotten this, like just the Hades and Persephone retelling, we've gotten that out of the way, we can move on into like her building her world more and building out like what she wants to do with this story that she's trying to tell. And I feel like we're going to get a lot more in the same timeline Hades book, which is book 2. I feel like we're going to get that set up from that book, which
and I know we're not talking about it, but just like curious, have you read the second one yet?
No.
Oh, okay, cool.
No, but I think that like it also is a little bit of a disservice and is a little bit of, I don't want to say poor choice, but like a little bit of like, you didn't give anything to any, there wasn't anything enticing to make people want to read on in book 1. There wasn't even like a what's gonna, like, it kind of ended with a pretty little bow and was like, this, you could stop here and not read anymore.
Yeah, that's literally what I thought actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, continue. Sorry. I'm like,
No.
yeah, I
So
thought the
yeah.
same thing. Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I liked it. I like Hades and Persephone. I will read on because I would probably read the other one, even if it was just these two books. I would probably read the same timeline from Hades' point of view because that interests me. Um,
Yeah.
since this was a single POV book, so having a whole nother book like his side of the story, that I do like those. So
Mhm.
I would probably read that anyway, and I probably will read that. I'll give it this next one to see if there is going to be a bigger plot, to see if I want to read on to the rest of the series, because there's like 4 books overall from Persephone's point of view and 3 books right now from Hades. So that's a pretty big series. That's 7, 8 books overall?
Yeah.
7 books. 7 books overall
Seven
so
bucks.
far.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a pretty big series considering these are decently long books. They're like 400 pages.
Yeah.
Um to like you have to set up a plot. There has to be something driving this.
Mhm.
Because there is a plot in this one, but it's just the Hades and Persephone plot. But it doesn't overarch into like a 7-book series. So
Right. Like from that information, I would be like, wait, 7. I think initially what I thought too, when I read it, I was like, oh my God, there's 7 books. I mean, off the top of my head, I
yeah,
didn't know it was 7, but I remember looking at
yeah,
Goodreads and being like, oh my God, all these books are part of the same story. Like, where are they going to go with this? Because it didn't really feel like
exactly.
it was going
I
anywhere.
feel like
But
book two has to do something
what
to like
worries me
give it
about
a
that
story.
is that it's his point of view. So if it like ends at the same time, I'm kind of like, how much more can they, like, how much more plot or story can be discovered from
And
just
we'll get into my hypothesis in the spoiler
okay.
section.
Okay,
So
perfect.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
But
so
yeah,
three,
that's it for me. So
so 3.5.
3.5, 3.5 rating, 3 star. 3 pepper, I mean.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the first time, maybe ever, we agree on spice rating, which is not Ash's fault, it's mine because I always mess up like what I think. Because I'm like, it's more how I feel. But then once
Yeah.
Ashley explains her spice rating, I'm like, oh no, that's actually probably accurate. But right off the bat, I was like, I thought it was a 3 spice. And then for
Yeah.
me, I would say, like, for me, I rated it a 2.75.
Yeah.
I really almost bumped it up like right before this call to a 3. But then like I'm very different in how I do my ratings from Ashley. Like I always compare it to other books that are in that same rating scale.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, I just didn't like it as much as some because 3 for us is like we liked it, right? And I
Yeah.
didn't this is hard for me because I didn't dislike this book at all. I enjoyed reading it for the most part. I thought it was interesting. Like I love Greek mythology, so that kept me going through it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I thought 2.75. I thought it was an easy read. I enjoyed the New Athens University, that she was like a journalist. Like I thought that was cool that she's like a god living on Earth as a journalist. I thought that was really interesting. I liked all the little introductions of, Greek gods that you know and you've heard about and read about. So like
Hmm.
um obviously Hecate was awesome. Hermes was great, like when he was introduced. I thought Hades was very, very um, hot, but then also something like he's like definitely morally gray in the beginning. Throughout the book, I thought he was a good morally gray
Yeah.
character, but I sometimes have trouble with like the whole like virginal girl and then like
Yeah. I hate
this
that.
like 1,000-year-old man. Like I'm just kind of like but I will say why I thought I kind of I rolled in the book, but then at the end I actually didn't mind it because I thought there are actions that Hades does later in the book that like show he's really a good person in some ways. Like he's morally
Hmm.
gray for sure, but he does things that you're like, oh, he's like, whether he's morally gray or not, he like does some really great
Yeah.
things that like redeem his character. So it made me like him a little more. But I'm just a little bit over like the verge. Like she hadn't even masturbated. Like
Yeah.
I was like, girl,
Well, and there's
not
something
saying
from
that
like,
that's not, I'm not saying that that's not a thing,
no,
right?
no,
But
no, no.
it was just kind of like you got this girl who's never even like masturbated and she's a virgin with this like
Yeah.
God who's like talked you into this deal. But I will say I got over it really fast when I got to know Hades more. I was like, oh, Hades is fine. I like Hades.
Yeah. But and like I dislike that trope a lot. Like I don't like that trope, but I accept it here because in mythology, she is a maiden goddess. She is like Artemis and like she is a maiden goddess. Like so she's not like she kind of breaks that for him.
Right, and she's
So
also not
yeah.
like just like a regular person, like you're saying. Like
Yeah.
it's not like she's like a
Yeah.
regular mortal who's just like a typical
Yeah.
human 20-year-old who's just like
Yeah.
delusional. So it is a little
Yeah.
different. And I think that also helped me too. I will say like not just in this book, just in most books where I'm nervous is like I finished the book being like there has to be more to this and I'd be interested in the second book. The only reason I'm hesitating is like I didn't rate it super high, but I would say of all the books I've rated sub 3, I would be most interested in reading this one
Yeah.
going forward. But I was nervous because I'm not a huge fan of this second point of view, same timeline. And this
Oh.
is like, I know I'm coming out of the closet here for the 5th time in my life. But it's also like Ashley knows this to be true because we are obviously like Twilight huge fans, right? But when
Yeah.
the second book came out, A Midnight Sun of Edward's
Yeah.
point of view, because it was Edward and I was so obsessed with Edward, I liked it. But like realistically, I was kind of like, And then one of our favorite series is Poison Study, and I cannot bring myself to read the Valak's point of view. It's not that I don't think they're good. I think I just have so many books that I want to read. So I was a little nervous. I probably will still read the second one, but I was kind of like, I don't feel like the plot moved much. And then now I'm going to read a second point of view of the plot possibly not moving much. But I did like
So
the book.
I understand what I get. I understand exactly what you're saying, and I was really hesitant with those kind of things before I read Valak's book, and like I think this one will be kind of similar in that like in the first book here, like yeah, Hades is there, but he's actually not there that often. He's off doing other things a lot. So even though it's the same timeline, it's not going to be like it's the exact same story because he's not there
Totally. Yeah.
that
No, you're
often.
right. Yeah. I think it's more of like,
Whereas like in Midnight Sun, Edward and Bella are always together.
yeah, totally.
Always.
Yeah.
So like and even when she's asleep, he's there. So
Right.
it's like
He's
you're
just
not
teaching her. I'm
getting
like, there's nothing new
you're
happening
not
here.
getting
Yeah.
that much more new. Versus this one I think you would get a lot more like new stuff.
Yeah.
And it would feel like a very different book. I will say for uh the Poison Study, Valak's point of view, it's a very different story. It's
Yeah.
like same but different. It feels very fresh. You don't get
Totally.
bogged down.
And
So
I
yeah,
still might. I think it's just like as probably people who the
there's so
people who
many
follow us
things to
on
read.
yeah, people who follow us on TikTok probably the same way. Like it's just like a thing. You just have your TBR is just so long. So it's
Hmm.
kind of like there are books that I've talked about in previous episodes that we've already shared that I'm like, I'm gonna read this book next. I haven't read that book. I've read 3 other books instead. Right. So
Yeah,
I definitely think but anyway, back to this. I
that
thought
that's the
Persephone
problem of the mood reader. The
I
mood
know.
reader.
I know. But yeah, I liked Persephone. I liked her relationship. I liked the dynamic of her and her mom. I
Yeah,
like I've said this before. I like a little conflict between parent and child. Like I love stories like that. Trying to find yourself, separate from your parents, be your own person, figure out who you are. Um, I really I liked her dynamic with her and her best friend Lexa or Lexi. Um, I liked Hades a lot. Loved Hecate. Like I really hope she's in the books more later. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I thought the world was really um like relatable. Obviously it's modern, urban fantasy, and then like the Greek mythology I thought was a cool twist, like how they are living together but separate, right? It's like these almost like
yeah.
different classes of people. Like the gods are here and then like humans are here. Um I thought it
Well,
was
like even when
interesting.
you go to
Like
the
they're like
underworld,
celebrities almost. They're like these like
yeah,
elite celebrities that
yeah,
are like if you get invited or you meet them, it's like, oh my God, like how cool would that
yeah.
be? Um, so yeah, I
Well,
liked it.
like even with like the world building, you can like when you go to the underworld, even though we're in this very modern urban setting. You go to the underworld, and it's much more like that typical fantasy setting of like, it feels like you've kind of said before, like that more medieval kind of feel of like the older age. So like you still kind of have like the pocket realms of this like
Yeah.
fantasy, like deep fantasy world
I
versus
will,
like an urban fantasy
yeah,
setting.
totally. I will say, just like totally a random, I read this book on my Kindle, but I did listen to it a little bit on Audible, and just like such a random call out. It's not a big deal at all, but I hated the way that the Audible reader read Lexa, which is her friend. Like,
Yeah.
the way she read her, I had to stop listening to the Audible and only read it on my Kindle because, and she's not in it a ton, but the voice that she did, like, it was just like, for me, and like everybody interprets characters different.
Wasn't it just like Valley Girl?
Yeah, it was just a hard miss. Like, Lex is supposed to be this like alternative, like tattooed, like, I just thought her being like this really cool character that kind of like contrasts with Persephone, and the way that the Audible person read her was like, "Oh my god, like, oh my god, Persephone. Oh yeah, totally, girl. Did you see Hades?" Like, it was such a weird, to me. It just,
But
but anyway, when I read it, I
yeah.
didn't have issues with her. When I listened to it, she would annoy me.
Okay. Because I would also say that like that was kind of Lexi's personality. Like
Well,
she was
I
kind
thought,
of like that. Let's go to the party. Come on. Let's go do this. Let's go hang out with these people. Come on.
and I can see her being like this, like really energetic, like outgoing. I saw her as like an outgoing, like, I just kind of I read her more as like this outgoing alternative badass who like wants to
Yeah.
go party, wants to go do things, wants to go live up life. And I didn't. She just read Lexa as like the most basic, like
Yeah.
valley girl. Like, it's kind of a different route. Like, you can be super energetic
Yeah.
and want to go party and stuff, and not read her that way. And it's just one character. Right? Like, reading multiple
Yeah.
characters is so hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but I was
100%.
just
Yeah.
kind of like, the way they wrote her, and then when I listened to the Audible, I switched over, and I was like, oh no, I can't do this. So I had
Yeah.
to turn it off and just
But
read it
that's also like the downside of listening
Audible.
to audiobooks, is that like a bad, like not a bad narrator, but like a bad reading of a character, like that doesn't fit what you think, can ruin the whole thing for you.
Totally. And I don't think
So
it was a bad narrator. I just didn't
no,
like
no, no,
the
no.
way that
I'm just
they
saying that
read.
like the
No, I agree.
like
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'd say
So
2.75 star, very close to 3. Like, if we didn't do anything in quarter percentage, like in 4 of this, I would probably rate it even higher than a 2.75. It's like a 2.9 maybe.
yeah,
And then Spice rating 3. So I liked it. I might read on. I definitely think I would. It would just kind of be, like Ashley said, like a mood read, or I have like something that I just don't have anything that's like I'm itching to read. I'm like, oh, I'll read the second one of A Touch of
yeah.
Darkness. But yeah,
But
I didn't have any.
you'd read the second in The Wicked in Me before you read the second in this.
Okay, The Wicked in Me was almost a 5-star read for me.
Yeah,
Like, that's on my list, and every time I almost open up another book, I'm like, I need to read the second of The Wicked in Me because I loved that book. Like,
yeah,
that book,
yeah,
I loved, love, 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 and I can't wait to read the second one. I think that's also why I'm kind of postponing reading it, because I know I'm gonna just devour it. But
yeah. And
this
the
one I
third one
liked.
comes out in January, so
Oh, I know. That's also why, because I'm like, if I power through the second one, I'm gonna be sitting here like, I want the third one. So, but yeah, that's my review. Should we get into the spoilers?
yes, let's do it.
Spoilers, boom.
Spoilers ahead. Yeah. Um, so I don't have a ton of stuff for this one because I feel like this story, like a lot of people have read Hades and Persephone book.
I
They
have
kind of know
one.
what to expect, but I do have
Oh,
one
good.
for you.
Okay, go.
Um, so this is one that I felt like was a little bit different than a lot of the other books we read. With a lot of the other books we've read so far, even though a lot of them have had a very strong romance element, even though some of them are like found in the romance section of a bookstore that have like paranormal aspects, those other stories still had a very big driving plot that was outside of like the relationship. This book was very focused on the relationship. This book was very much more about the relationship between Hades and Persephone. And like the plot was kind of, how do we get these two people together? so very different than what we've read before, and very different, especially when talking about like a fantasy book. Did you like that? Is it something that you were like, I wouldn't want to read it every time, but I found it enjoyable? Or like, are you kind of like, that's not really for me?
No, I did. I definitely didn't think the plot, like I was like, oh, it's not really moving. But I did like the romance part of it. I thought I was like, oh, okay, I get it. They're like, this is like kind of like a romance
Yeah.
story. But I enjoyed it. I think for me, I almost wanted them to like lean more into that almost. Like I thought, but I know it's only the first book, and if they're going to try to make 7 books, right, you can't like give us all the things that we want in book one. But
But also, they could have gone on a date. They didn't even go out.
something. I think it was kind of like if you're gonna be romance, like and not super plot driven, then like give me more romance or like make me
Yeah.
really just like oh my heart melt at like some of the things that they say to each other, which I know it's the first book, right? So
Because
it's
once again, they're not on page together that much. And even though it's the first book, Jared, they're not on page together that much. And he's already like, they've also both, by the end of the book, already dropped that they love each other. So,
right.
and
That
that's
was
the kind
so
of
weird
stuff
to
that
me too.
I'm like, I get it. And it's like a new love, which could easily turn in the real world, like whatever, fine. Um, but you guys haven't been like on a date. You guys haven't been in like a situation of like living day-to-day lives. Like, yeah, he came to her apartment and like baked with her and like did stuff with her. But like there wasn't enough for me of like a grounding of like the relationship that like this relationship has a base to stand on.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
just
No, I agree. And like to answer your question though, I think it's just I didn't mind that it was more romance. I just didn't know if this
Mhm.
is the book that and I haven't like I'm gonna say it here. I haven't read a lot of like just straight up romance or like romantasy that's more focused solely on romance.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
but I think I would totally be into it. I thought Bride kind of was. Like I thought
well,
Bride
that's the
seemed
thing. Yeah, Bride is that's what I'm talking about though. Like Bride is it's a romance. It's in the romance section, but there's a big driving like and the book is about their relationship, but there's a big driving plot that's
yeah,
not
but even
the romance.
and maybe this isn't like a fair statement, but even if there wasn't a driving plot in Bride, I think I was interested in their love story.
Yeah.
Like I thought it
No,
was
no,
I was
no.
like, "Oh, I like this. I want to know more." So I think I'm down for romance. I love like a good like heartwarming story. I just kind of was
I
like
guess
I didn't know what they were trying to do. Like I was like, "Oh wait, is it more romance or is it okay, well it's definitely not plot." But I just wanted
yeah,
more of like either Hades or more Persephone or more just
yeah.
of them as if not together, more of them
I guess
separately to
I guess
care
my
about their
question
romance.
isn't my I guess my question isn't did you like this? I guess my question is actually more because I didn't think you didn't like the romance. So I guess my question was actually not phrased very well. I guess my question isn't did you like this? I guess my question is more did it work and was it believable?
I thought it worked until the end for me. For me, like personally, I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is believable, mysterious. He's hot. There's obviously some like tension here. I didn't think like the love they had at the end kind of felt a little like what? Okay, whoa.
Yeah.
That seems like
Yeah.
that's fast. But I'm like they're
Yeah.
gods, so like maybe there's stuff I don't know about. But I was kind of
Yeah.
like I thought like they were just starting to like really respect each other, like mutually of like as
Mhm.
human or as human beings, as
Human beings.
people,
As
right? And
godlike beings.
yeah, and as soon as they like both realized, oh, she's like, oh, Hades isn't actually shitty. She's like, oh, okay, I love him. Like I was like,
Mhm.
whoa, okay. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. I didn't dislike it. I was just kind of like, okay, well, this is what was
Yeah.
written on the page. I'll just move on. But I
Cuz
was like,
yeah.
it wasn't like super believable for me, but
Yeah.
I wanted it to be believable because I
Yeah.
did like both of them and I did like them both together.
Yeah. Cuz see really I don't necessarily find by the end of it their relationship super believable. I don't think they could be in love. I don't think they know each other well enough for that. I think they could be like I want to be with you. They could be that. Like, I want to make this work. I want to be with you. This
On
could
that
go somewhere,
totally.
but
On
I
that
don't think it.
note,
Yeah,
her being 20, I could see Persephone thinking she's in love with him.
yeah,
100%. Like I could be
yeah,
like, hello, we're all been there. You're young, super
100%,
fucking hot
100%.
billionaire. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm in love with him. I probably wouldn't even I while he was being shitty, I might have been like, I think I'm in love with him. Like the
she's like,
first
we've made a deal. You owe me this. I love you.
yeah, I'd be like, yeah, let's get married. Probably at that age I would have been like,
Yeah,
wait, tall, attractive, rich, like
yeah,
he's into me. He tricked me into like being stuck with him. Sign me up.
yeah.
Is that
You're
is
telling
that
me I have
me?
to wait 6 months? I have to wait
Yeah.
6 months? We can't
I'm
just
like, let
do
me
this
just slide
shit
it over.
now? Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
totally.
done. Oops, can't do it.
But I will say him being this god who's been around for thousands of years is kind of like really like
And then, like,
mm,
from his point of view, like, from his, like, side of that, then it's also like from his story, and once again, haven't read his story, but then it's like, so the first girl who shows you a modicum of interest, never mind the whole prophecy fate thing, the first girl who's like semi nice to you and like is interested, who isn't like your assistant or like indentured to you, well, she is kind of indentured to him, but
in some ways,
you're
yeah,
like,
but
I love
separately.
her, I love her. So it's like, I don't know. I had a hard time with their
Yeah.
relationship, and and to me, that's not the Hades and Persephone retelling doing that. That's the way that this author did it, because I've read another one that like I really like that's a lot spicier is the Katie Robert Hades and Persephone retelling.
Mhm.
That series is a lot spicier, and then I felt like their relationship was more believable
Yeah.
um in that retelling.
Yeah, and
And
I'm rooting for both
so
of them. Like I'm rooting for
yeah.
both of them. I'm rooting for them together. I definitely think like I'm interested in them as a couple. I just was kind of
Mhm.
like, oh, I kind of didn't see that happening yet. So
Yeah.
like it would have
Yeah.
been a
And
really
so
good like second book, or sorry, I guess third book, because like a
yeah.
good
Well,
third
so I'm
book,
like,
like
well,
we
that's the
love each
thing
other. Oh,
though.
cool.
That's another reason why I want to read the second book in this series, is because it'll maybe fill in some of those gaps from his side for me. I also, based on that and based on what I said earlier, the spoiler for like my hypothesis is like in this series, like he goes off for like a week and a half to like a meeting at Olympus and blah blah blah.
Oh, right.
And because he's not on the page so much in this book, in the second book, I think that that's where we're going to pick up those, like, a deeper plot for the series. I feel like there's going to be something going on. Someone's
In
gonna
Olympus. Yeah.
like come to like try to like provoke his power. Like the meter's gonna be pissed about Persephone and him, and like it's gonna kind of cause this like, I think there's gonna be like some like war of the gods kind of situation going
Fair.
on.
Yeah.
So I think that we're gonna get that in the second one. We don't get it from Persephone because Persephone is in this book until the very end of it,
Mm.
trying very hard not to be a goddess. Like she doesn't want to be part of that world. She wants to be part of the mortal world. So I think the driving force of the overall series is going to be in book 2. And it's going to be much more related to like the gods and goddesses and how Olympus works and like the
Well, yeah, and
backstabbing
I'm
and like
really curious
that
to
kind
see,
of
and I
stuff.
don't know enough about the Greek mythology, so I don't know if this is like
Yeah.
consistent throughout or if this is just kind of like their retelling. But I'm also curious to see like why does Demeter, which is her mom, hate him so much?
Mhm.
Like obviously he's the god of the underworld, so maybe
They
that's why.
they talk
But
about it
I
in the book a little bit. They talk
yeah,
about
they
it in the
do a
book a little
little, but
bit.
I'm just kind of like, damn, she really hates his ass. But if Hades is going to Olympus, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of like almost like politics of like the gods not
Mhm.
liking each other,
Mhm.
which I'm really
Yeah.
interested in. I will say, like, I don't know if this is normally part of the story, which you probably, if it isn't, I'm sure you thought the same thing. If it is, then
Yeah.
you definitely did. When they were like, you've got to create life in the underworld, I was like, she means a baby. They mean a baby. She's gonna get
Mhm.
pregnant. It's not plants. It's not like
Yeah.
flowers. It's like I immediately when I read that, I was like,
Yeah.
I thought, oh,
If I'm
life in the
if I'm
underworld. If he
remembering,
makes her
yeah.
pregnant, then that could count.
If I'm remembering right, that is immediately what I thought. But that's immediately what I thought was going to happen. But if I'm remembering right from actual Greek mythology, and I very well could not be, but like she was brought down to the underworld to create life, and she created the pomegranate in the underworld. It was something to do with the pomegranate.
Okay.
Um,
I just like when Hecate
in
is
actual
like,
Greek mythology, but
yeah. In the
but
book when Hecate is like, oh, you actually like if you have his baby or like if he
yeah,
gets you pregnant,
yeah,
I was like, knew it. I literally knew that was another
yeah.
option.
But then also, I think that she did it like she did it anyway because she like broke the thing. But like it
Right.
was just her bringing like life, like joy, life, like living, like
Totally.
that mentality of like we're not just here to like, and not necessarily to like seeing it and seeing other people doing it and bringing hope, which is hope is a huge thing in Greek mythology. So like bringing hope to the underworld of like our existence is more than just death.
Right.
And teaching that to Hades, who is the underworld. So
Yep.
yeah,
Okay, so I have a question for you. So
yeah,
you,
yeah.
if this is part of Greek mythology, you can just be like, actually, I already know the answer to this because it's part of Greek
We'll
mythology.
see.
But like,
Well,
what are your theories with Adonis? So Adonis is like this guy that she works with. He's
mhm.
such a fucking I hate him. Hate his character, which I think he's written to be hated. Hades
Yes,
doesn't like him. He's like, what is he, bound or something to Aphrodite, or what is that
he's
called?
favored. Yeah,
Favored
favored.
by Aphrodite. And then they like work together and she writes this article and then Adonis just like publishes it, which I kind of was like, tell your fucking friends, like
Yeah.
tell her right away, which
No, no, no.
eventually
Tell your boss.
both.
I'm sorry.
Both. But if you were dating someone who did that to me, I would be like, hey, bitch, just so you know, your boyfriend, I wrote an article
But
and I literally said not to post it, and you're fucking the guy you think is cute. And you know what you would do? You'd be like, what? And then you would literally
yeah.
not be interested in him anymore.
But see, the other thing though is that like, but that's also, here's the thing. That's also a woman thing though, is to be afraid to say something like that because he sent it
Okay.
in, he posted it, but he posted it with her name. It was extremely manipulative. It was
Mm,
extremely like not good and it was really shitty. But when you look at it, he like the fear is when someone else looks at it, he didn't really gain anything from that. So what harm did he do?
mm.
And that idea of like, well, he didn't hurt you.
Well,
So is there a
that is
problem?
Oh, yeah, that's so valid. Thank you for saying that. And if that's the case, then fuck men. So
Yeah.
literally just fuck
No.
men. Because if
Yeah.
women, and you're right, like I could totally see your reality is real, and I actually see that totally makes sense. Like
Yeah.
women in the workplace being afraid to like bring up something that their trash ass
And
men
yeah.
coworkers do. It's just such a,
But then
and I'm
also
sure
to
that
tell
happens
your
all the time.
friend, when you're a main character, Persephone is a character who's been beat down constantly by her mom, told how much she can't do, told how much
Right,
like all this stuff, and like to like go to your friend who's really into a guy and say that the fear being not that her friend would do that. Lexi actually probably wouldn't, but the fear
right.
is in that mentality, that anxiety of no one's going to believe that this is a bad thing. They're just going to tell me, well, he just did you a favor.
Right, which is so
Yeah.
realistic, and honestly, that's
Yeah.
such a twisted world we live in, where
It is, absolutely
women are
is.
held to the
Yeah.
standard that is so
But women have to think also 7 different degrees of a
right,
situation
and men are
of
just used
like,
to being
that
told it.
person's just trying to help
Yeah,
you.
and men are just
Yeah.
told like, yeah, whatever you want to do, like, great choice, great idea,
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
But
No, that makes
but
sense.
going to
So
Adonis, like
Adonis,
in yeah, in Greek mythology, he is exactly what they describe him in the book, where he's like this like beautiful, like perfect human. He is also like in Greek mythology favored by Aphrodite as being like beautiful and like all the women love him. Like but then like he does some shitty stuff in Greek mythology. And he is I'm trying to remember. I can't remember exactly. And correct, like people in comments correct me, but don't correct me. No. But correct me if I'm wrong. I think he has something to do with Helen of Troy. That whole mythology scenario. I think he's involved in there some way. But he gets in Greek mythology, because everything is a tragedy in Greek mythology. He gets his comeuppance. So
Okay. So
I
you
think
don't
I
you
think
don't have
I don't
some
think he'll come
theories?
back. I think he'll come back. I think he'll get fucked over, and I'm pretty sure he'll get killed at some point for being a douchebag. Jason, the guy that Lexi does end up with, is also in Greek mythology. Lexi's not in Greek mythology though. So you don't really get like Hecate isn't in Greek mythology. Witches in Greek mythology are like Circe and stuff like that. But Jason's in Greek mythology, and he's another hero, like a human hero. He's not a god or anything like that. But
Interesting.
I'm interested to see if we get Heracles though
Yeah.
in this series. Like I'm
TBD.
interested to see if he comes in anywhere. And then there's also Perseus. We could see him. There are a lot of people. I'm interested also to see Medusa, but I love that like Minty gets turned into a like I just love that. This series, I know you haven't read it. We've talked about it a little bit. This series is so similar to me to the webcomics series lore, which is like one of the I cannot read comics. My best friend from college has tried for years to help me read comics, and I cannot do it. My brain does not know what to focus on, the words, the images. Like I can't do it. The only comic I can read is lore because I know the story, so I can pay attention to I can pay attention to it a little bit better because I know the story well enough at least. But anyway, but it's very similar, like a lot of the same things. It has very similar vibes, and I really like it. But Minty's a bitch, and I hated her. She got what she deserved, and I'm happy that she's a mint plant. So
Yeah, what a little bitch
yeah,
too. I was like, oh my God, get out of here.
yeah, get out of here.
Also, there's like just like like her boss Dimitri. I'm just like so
Hmm.
curious because like I was just like where he seemed like a good guy. I just don't know, like
Yeah,
he could just be a boss, right? But I'm curious if like
yeah.
he ends up being
I
something else later.
I did like. I thought Persephone was very like I felt like what she did with the Adana situation at work was very on character. I felt like it fit what she would do. It fit for me, but I did like Dimitri coming in and being like, "I've got your back." Later,
Same.
like being like, "You have to tell me these things. I understand where you're coming from, but I got your back. You have to let me know." But
Yeah.
then also in like it's gonna be book 3 because book 2 will just be the same stuff. But book 3, since Adonis is technically where it left off, like coming back to work, I'm interested to see what happens.
Yeah, he's definitely gonna be like a major villain
But now
arc
that Persephone
storyline.
has her, powers and is kind of taking on her goddess role, like
I
will
hope
we
she fucks
see it
him
like
up.
get like smacked down?
Or maybe
So
Aphrodite is gonna be a bigger part because
because because Adonis knows too, because they had that like Aphrodite, Adonis, and
yeah.
Persephone kind of had that face off. So he knows. So
Interesting.
interesting. I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm really intrigued
Yeah.
by it.
Definitely will. I mean, definitely will let you know, my friend, if I read the second one, so we can chat
Yeah.
about it. But it's definitely on my list. It's just a long list of things to read.
Hmm. Especially with the stuff that we're reading for the show. So,
Yeah, true.
yeah, yeah. We got some that we have to hit,
What
and
are
then
we
we're both
reading?
in book clubs.
What are we? Yeah, we're both in book clubs. We have books that we obviously read on our own. Then we're
Yep.
mood readers, and then we have books
Yep.
that we read for the
So,
podcast. But what are we reading next? Because we have this
um,
has been the second installment of our Indigenous authors theme. But for our
Yeah.
third
So our
book,
third book, we're going to be reading Tantalize by Cynthia. I'm going to butcher this, and I'm very sorry.
it's okay.
Lit Litchke Smith.
Better
Um.
better you than me.
Um. Yeah, I butchered that second name, and I'm sorry. But once again, another Indigenous author. This book is also will be fun for us. It's marketed as a um dark fantasy romance. It is set in Austin.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. So I was like, that could be kind of fun.
So
Um,
are they sweating their tits off in that book too, or
probably,
we'll see, I guess.
probably. I mean, I don't know. There's a time in Austin when you're not.
Right.
Um, it is. It is a little bit. It's like older YA.
Okay.
Um, it's an older book too. It was published in 2007.
Okay.
So yeah. So I'm interested to read
Before
this
TikTok.
before TikTok. Who was to know? But yeah. So it's like basically set on like South Congress,
Oh
like
my
the
God.
yeah. So I read like a few pages of it, and just like placing things is so easy.
That's so funny. Well, okay, so like
Um,
if you're in Austin, South Congress is like a staple or like SoCo.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's kind of funny. That's a perfect
So
segue actually, because another
yeah,
staple of Austin, I feel like if
yeah.
you've lived in Austin for a long time, is Manchac. And if you live in Austin now or you're a transplant from California, which is fine, we won't judge you. They call it Menchaca, right? So like it's spelled Menchaca. Before it was spelled Menchaca, it was spelled Manchaca, and then before that, people just called it Manchac. So like,
Yeah,
oh, it's off Manchac. So anyway, the bookstore that I'm going to highlight today is called Reverie Books, and
yeah.
it's queer and woman owned, and it's off Manchac or Menchaca in South Austin. It's a really really small shop. It's next
They
to
have such a good selection,
they do
though.
have a good selection. They have a good selection. They're right next to that coffee shop that we kind of talked about that has like the silent read that Ashley and I went to recently.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives like neighborhood vibes, like the area does, the kind of like strip mall where the
Mm-hmm.
bookstore is located. It's open 7 days a week, which is nice. It's open from 11 to 7 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then from 10 to 8 on the rest of the days of the week. So I actually have to go in tomorrow. It's going to go in tonight. I guess I still could because it's open till 7. Um, to
Good
pick up,
luck.
yeah, I'm getting there in time. But I just placed an order. There's a book that I wanted, and they just like placed it. And they just called me today to tell me that it's in. So they're super sweet, and the people that work there, if you get the owner, she's awesome, and then if you get anyone else who works there, they have tons of recommendations, and if they don't have what you want, they'll just order it for you. So Reverie Books, check them out on Instagram, um, and or off Manchaca in Austin, Texas. So yeah,
Awesome. Well, we thank you guys so much for joining us, and we hope you join us again next week, once again for Tantalize, as we hit our third book in our theme of Indigenous authors.
woo.
I'm really enjoying this, and it was kind of I feel like this month we've had such a diverse like options of like fantasy, but like different books within fantasy. They've all had very different feels to
Oh
them.
yeah, these
Um,
reads these reads this month are so different from each other. It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
So yeah,
So super excited. Hope you guys keep listening, and we'll see you again next week.
see you next week. Bye.